has its own stories, and storytelling helps to keep these stories alive. A storyteller brings life to the written text and takes the listener to the realm of imagination. We,
Shivang Kakkar,
Vedansh Rajput and
Advita.
on behalf of the English department, welcome you all to the Inter-House English Storytelling Competition.
the stories are based on the 12 round square discoveries that students explore on their learning journey. They are inquisitiveness, tenacity, courage, compassion, inventiveness, ability to solve problems, self-awareness, sense of responsibility, appreciation of diversity, commitment to sustainability, communication, and team working skills. On behalf of English Department, I would now like to welcome our judges, Miss Rajbir Sandhu, Miss Sajneet Sandhu, and Miss Ruchi Datta. Judges, we are honored to have you with us today.
The rules of the competition are as follows. The participant must choose a story that is relevant to the community. The participant must include at least one round square discovery in the telling of the story as its overarching theme. The story must be of some literary merit, no original pieces. The narration of the story should last a minimum of 5 minutes and not go beyond 7 minutes.
The story may be a regional folktale or a modern tale from India or anywhere in the world. The storyteller must introduce his or her story, its origin, the writer, and a brief 2 lines explaining why they have chosen that narrative. The story must be narrated with expression, but should not be dramatized. No acting. Reading from paper and referring to any notes on stage will lead to disqualification.
So, are you all ready as the participants are here to take you on a joyride through their wonderful stories? To begin with, we have the participants from class 7. Our first participant is Vedaksh Verma, who will present the story titled The Treasure in the Forest by H.G. Wells.
What on earth would a man do with himself if nothing stood in his way? Good morning. I, Vidaksh from grade 7, will be narrating the story A Treasure in the Forest by Herbert George Wells. The canoe was now approaching the land. The bay opened out, and a gap in the white surf of the reef marked where the river joined the sea. The thicker and deeper green of the virgin forest uh, The thicker and deeper green of the virgin forest ran down the distant hill slope. Far beyond, dim and almost cloud-like in texture, rose the mountains like suddenly frozen waves. The sea was still, save for an almost imperceptible swell. The sky blazed. "It should be somewhere here," he said. The other man, who was closely scrutinizing the island, held a piece of creased and worn paper in his hand in the appearance of a rough map. The canoe was almost close to the mouth of the lagoon. Uh, the uh, the the Evans, who was the man with the map, was confused with the writing, which was in Chinese. Uh, when uh, when the canoe had almost when the canoe was beached at the island, it had the rhythmic wash of the seawater lulled Evans into a sleep, and he slipped into a dream. The night when the Chinaman uh, revealed the secret to Evans and Hooker. A Spanish ship aground, its treasure buried. Uh, Chang He had chanced upon it and reburied the treasure safely. He laid great stress on the treasure because it was his secret. Evans' dream then shifted to the moment where he had Chang He's pigtail in his hand in search for the map. Uh, Evans saw heaps of gold and Chang He struggling to hold him back from it. Uh, the heaps of gold then turned into a roaring fire, and a vast devil, surprisingly like Chang He, fed him with pieces of coal. They burnt his mouth horribly. Another devil was shouting his name. Evan, Evan, you sleepy fool. Or was it Hooker? He woke up. They had reached the mouth of the lagoon. Those are the three palm trees in line with the clump of bushes. They pushed back into the river and reached the clump of bushes. They beached the canoe, got out, and went to the edge of the jungle until they found the opening of the reef, and the gap of the white surf. Over there was something they could see. Evans said, "What in the devil's that?" "Something blue," said Hooker. They drew closely until the body became visible. It was a Chinaman lying on his face. They were confused, so they stared at the ominous dead body for a minute. Then Hooker was puzzled, and Evans was scared, so he did not approach the hole. Hooker looked at the body. The body's neck was puffed and purple, arms and hands swollen. Then he shouted out to his companion, "Evan, you fool! It's all right. The gold is here still." Evans hurried to the hole. There lay half exposed yellow dull bars. Evan hastily pulled out one of the ingots. As he did, he got pricked by a thorn. Uh, Hooker, Hooker then threw out his jacket and flung 2, 3 ingots onto the jacket. Evans was still puzzled and was still looking at the body of the Chinaman. And after a queer rush of irritation, Hooker asked, "What are you staring at?" Evans said, "I can't stand it," nodded to the Chinaman's body. The Evans, after he had been pricked by the thorn, decided to pick up the gold with Hooker and take it to the canoe. Uh, Hooker then, Evans then said that his arms were aching from paddling, so he wanted to rest for a second. The transition of that emotion from tired to unreasonable anger showed him shouting at Hooker to lend him a hand and pick up the gold once again. After they had walked for a second, Evan stumbled. "Don't touch me," he said. He went and leant against the tree. His grip on the trunk loosened, and he crumpled like a heap at its foot. Hooker was confused. "Don't touch me," said Evans again. "Put the gold back into the coat." As Hooker was doing that, a thorn pricked his finger. His jaw dropped. He looked at the thorn with eyes dilated. He had realized what was going on. The thorn were full of Daek's poison. Chang He had the assurance of safety on the Daek's poison. He had understood his grin now. As Hooker shouted to Evans, "Evans, please get up." He did not say anything. He was silent and motionless. Hooker had felt an aching in his arm, and then uh, he stared at the distorted body of his companion. Then Changhi came into his mind. The dull pain spread from the body to the throat, and now the faint breeze stirred the greenery, and the white petals from an unknown flower floating down the gloom. Thank you.
Judges, kindly note that the participant spoke for 6 minutes and 55 seconds.
It is rightly said that we should not take risks when we are unprepared. Wow, what an adventurous story, Vidaksh. Now we move on to the next participant. Now we move on to the next participant, Harpriya Bakshi, who is going to present the story titled The Thief's Story by Ruskin Bond.
Hello everyone, my name is Harpriya Bakshi and I'm from class 7C. I have selected to narrate The Thief Story by Ruskin Bond. It's a simple yet a profound story which gives the value of trust, courage and forgiveness. So let's get started. Smith was a thief when he met Mike, and though only 15, he was a fairly successful and experienced hand. Mike was watching a wrestling match when he approached him. He was about 25, a tall, lean fellow who looked easygoing, kind, and simple enough for his purpose. Smith immediately wanted to get into the young man's confidence. "You look a bit of a wrestler yourself," Smith said. "So do you," Mike replied, which put Smith off for a moment because at that time he was rather thin. After a casual conversation, Smith wanted to work for Mike, but Mike couldn't really pay Smith. So Smith asked him, "Can you feed me?" "Can you cook?" Mike asked again. "I can cook," but Smith lied. And that night, the meal Smith cooked was terrible because they had to feed it to a stray dog. Later, Mike patted on Smith's head and said, "Never mind, I'll teach you how to cook." He even taught Smith how to write his name, and, and he said that he would soon teach him more. Smith was grateful, and he knew that once he could write like an educated man, there would be nothing which could stop him from um, can I please take a look at my paper?
Ma'am, should we restart the time?
Smith enjoyed working with Mike. He made the tea in the morning and then he would take his time buying the day's supplies, usually making a profit of about 50 rupees a day. Mike made money by a little odd way. He would borrow one week, lend the next. He would celebrate and go out on receiving his paycheck. One evening, he came home happily with a bundle of notes. At night, Smith saw him tuck the money under their mattress. A month had gone by. Smith had done nothing in his line of work apart from cheating here and there to, during shopping, even though he had every chance to do a lot more. Mike trusted him and had also given him the key to his house. Surprisingly, it was difficult to rob him. You see, it's easy to rob a greedy man, but because he can afford to be robbed. But it's difficult to rob a careless man. Sometimes he doesn't even notice he's been robbed, and that takes all the pleasure out of the work. Smith felt a little jittery because he had been out of practice, clearly enough. It was the night time. Mike was sound asleep. Smith wanted to take the best advantage of the situation. He thought, with that much of money, he could make a decent living for himself. He stealthily pulled the money out of the mattress and ran out. As he slowed down, he counted the notes. 20,000 rupees? He was elated. He reached the train station and rushed towards the platform. He saw the train slowly picking up the pace. He could easily jump in, but for some reason, he hesitated. The train had left, and he found himself standing on the deserted platform. He was all alone. He had nowhere to go, and no friends and family to look upon. The only person he could count on was the man he had robbed. Sitting alone, he pondered over his past experiences. He learned how different people responded after being robbed. A greedy man showed fear, the rich man showed anger, and the poor showed acceptance. But in the back of his head, he knew that Mike showed sadness, not for the loss of money, but for the loss of trust. Soon it started to pour heavily, and the night got chilly. It was midnight already, and he felt his notes get damp from the rain. Guilt crept up on him, and he thought all about the good moments he spent with Mike. Well, stealing was quite easy, but to be a respected man was something else. He decided to get back to Mike, though it was the hardest decision of that time. He hurried back to the room, feeling very nervous, for he had to put back the money undetected. He opened the door quietly and very meticulously slipped the notes under the mattress. The next morning, the day started the usual way. Mike made his tea and he stretched out his hand towards Smith. To his surprise, there was a 50-rupee note between his fingers. Smith was already nervous. Mike threw another surprise bomb. He promised he would now pay him regularly. Mike knew everything for sure, but he never made it apparent. They smiled at each other and moved on. Thank you.
No doubt, human values and relations are important in life, and they can change a person. It was indeed a brilliant story, Harpriya.
Judges, kindly note that the participant spoke for 6 minutes and 19 seconds.
Coming up now is the third participant, Anshika Singla, with the story titled The Aged Mother by Matsuo Basho.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I, Anshika Singla of Class 7B, will be telling you the story The Aged Mother by Matsuo Basho. It is a 17th century Japanese folk tale that tells the story of an unkind ruler who issues cruel orders, including a demand to abandon old people to die. It tells a poignant tale of a mother and her son and their love and compassion for one another. I chose this story because I feel it is relevant to today's society as well, and that we should care and respect our elders. Um, the story has many round square discoveries in it, two of which are compassion and courage. Now I'll begin my story. Long, long ago, in the country of Shining, lived a poor farmer and his aged, widowed mother. They owned a bit of land which supplied them with food, and they were humble, peaceful, and happy. Shining was governed by a despotic leader who, though a warrior, had a great and cowardly shrinking from anything suggestive of failing health or strength. This caused him to send out a cruel proclamation. The entire province was given strict orders to immediately put to death all aged people. Those were barbarous days, and the custom of abandoning old people to die was not uncommon. The poor farmer loved his aged mother with tender reverence, and the order filled his heart with sorrow. But no one ever thought twice about disobeying the mandate of the governor. So, with many deep and hopeless sighs, the youth prepared for what at that time was considered the kindest mode of death. Just at sundown, when his day's work ended, he took some unripened rice and swung it in a bundle around his neck, along with a gourd filled with cool, sweet water. Then he started his painful journey up the mountain with his mother swung him helplessly on his back. The road was long and steep. The narrow path was crossed and recrossed by many more paths made by the hunters and woodcutters. In some places he was lost and confused, but he gave no heed. One path or another, it mattered not. On he went, climbing upward, blindly upward, towards the high, bare summit of what is known as Ubatsuyama, the mountain of abandoning the aged. The eyes of the old mother were not so dim, and they noticed the reckless hastening from one path to another. And her loving heart grew anxious. Her son did not know the mountain's many paths, and his return may be one of danger. So she stretched forth her hand, and snapping twigs from branches as they passed, she quietly dropped a handful every few steps of the way, so that as they climbed, the narrow path behind them was dotted at frequent intervals with tiny piles of twigs. At last the summit was reached. Weary and heartsick, the youth gently released his burden and silently prepared a place of comfort as his last duty to his loved one. Gathering fallen pine needles, he made a soft cushion and tenderly lifted his old mother onto it. He wrapped her padded coat more closely about her stooping shoulders, and with tearful eyes and an aching heart, he said farewell. The trembling mother's voice was full of unselfish love as she gave her last injunction. "Let thine eyes not be blinded, my son," she said. "The mountain road is full of dangers. Look carefully and follow the path which holds the piles of twigs. Only they will guide you to the familiar path further down." The son's surprised eyes looked back over the path, and then at the poor old shriveled hands, all scratched and soiled by their work of love. His heart broke within, and bowing to the ground, he cried aloud, "Oh, honorable mother, I will not leave you. Together we will follow the path of twigs, and together we will die." Once again he shouldered his burden. Oh, how light it seemed now, and he hastened down the path, through the shadows and to the moonlight, to the little hut in the valley. Beneath the kitchen floor, there was a walled closet for food, covered and hidden from view. There the son hid his mother, supplying her with everything she needed, continually watching and fearing she would be discovered. Time passed, and he was beginning to feel safe, when again the governor sent forth heralds bearing another unreasonable order, seemingly as a boast of his power. His demand was that his subjects should present him with a rope of ashes. The entire province trembled with dread. The order must be obeyed. Yet who in all of Shining could make a rope of ashes? One night, in great distress, the son whispered the news to his hidden mother. "Wait," she said. I will think. On the second day, she told him what to do. "Make a rope of twisted straw," she said. "Then stretch it upon a row of flat stones and burn it on a windless night." The son called all the people together and did as she said. And when the blaze died down, there upon the stones, with every twist and fiber showing perfectly, lay a rope of ashes. The governor was surprised and really pleased at the wit of the youth, and he praised him greatly. But he demanded to know where the youth had obtained his wisdom. Alas, alas, cried the farmer, the truth must be told. And with deep bows, he related his story. The governor listened and then meditated in silence. Finally, he lifted his head. Shining needs more than the strength of youth, he said gravely. Ah, that I should have forgotten the well-known saying, with crown of snow there cometh great wisdom. That very hour the cruel law was abolished, and at last the mother began to live freely with her beloved son. Thank you.
Truly said, we should respect our parents as they possess wisdom that gives shape to our present as well as future.
Judges, kindly note that the participants spoke for 6 minutes and 54 seconds.
Thank you, Anshika, for such a heartwarming story. Now we have Rinaz Gulati.
Yes, ma'am. May I start? Good morning, everyone. Today, I, Rinaz Glati of class 7B, is going to be presenting to you The Sleeping Beauty from Fairy Tales of Millennials by Vincent Bruno. You may all have heard the years-old tale of Sleeping Beauty, but the author, Vincent Bruno, retells it with a modern twist that caters to the new generation far better. In this story, Sleeping Beauty is no longer a damsel in distress that needs saving, but a strong, independent woman who brings change along. I chose this story in particular because I loved the way Vincent Bruno, through his humorous writing style, highlighted how even our beloved fairy tales can be flawed and how we should always welcome change. Once upon a time in fairyland, there lived a princess who was born late and she was the only child. This meant that the parents were a total nightmare and worried themselves sick over everything. Nothing was enough for their little girl. After all, she was their little princess. They dressed her up in pink dresses, curled her hair with brown blonde ringlets, and gave her all the princess appropriate toys to play with. They were always worried she was coming down with something. So they kept on retainer a troupe of very old medics who offered the same old remedies, whether they worked or not, which they didn't really. The princess was homeschooled and taught everything about the history of princesses, how to use cutlery, how to get out of carriage without showing your knickers. She was never taught anything that didn't relate to royalty because they didn't want to upset her with subjects like death and poverty. The, the, as you may have imagined, the princess grew up believing that everyone was like her. She thought even the servants had palaces, albeit smaller ones. And she thought in her heart that everyone could be a princess if they just tried hard enough. On the princess's 16th birthday, the parents couldn't resist throwing their wonderful daughter a big festival. Gifts came from far and wide. Pageants were held in her honor. But it all came to a crashing halt on the day of the grand feast, where the princess was discovered lying unconscious in her bedroom. The palace was thrown into a state of panic and despair. Everyone was chaotic. The medical specialists were called from far and wide. But of course, they were already there, just at the end of the corridor. She's in a coma, they agreed. Caused by what? Asked the queen. It could be a number of... It's an allergic reaction, said the queen. All of them stood near her bedside, around 4 dozen of them. What could this be caused by? It could be fur, said a courtier. Fur! I'm allergic to it myself. That must be it, exclaimed the queen. Soon, every piece of fur was eradicated from the palace, and when every piece of fur had been destroyed, a duke, a blood relation of the princess, that remembered that his aunt had a nut allergy. What kind of nut? Asked the king. Every kind, I think, said the duke. They all rushed to the kitchen and purged it of nuts. And legumes while we here, said an anonymous voice. No one truly knew where this voice came from, but it carried authority. So burn the legumes went the cry. After the legumes had been burned and the nuts had been destroyed, they returned to the princess' bedroom to find her still slumbering, her face so tranquil and exquisite. It could be the detergents, said a countess. I remember I had a terrible skin problem when I didn't switch detergents. Soon, the king replaced the detergent procuring general with a newer, younger blood, albeit these were largely ceremonial names. Other members in the palace shared anecdotes about how she could be allergic to shellfish and dairy. It was easy to get rid of shellfish. It would take about an hour or so because there were only 3 vendors. But ridding the dairy would be very hard because the dairy farmers had to be compensated. Many more theories like this followed, and soon everything that a person had ever been heard to be allergic of was destroyed. Pineapples, bamboo, dust, mite, feathers, wool, cobwebs, unicorns, and face paint. But nothing worked. The princess kept on sleeping. The, at some point of time, the world had to move on, which they did. But within the castle, world remained on hiatus, and they couldn't bear to leave their beloved princess. A witch coming down from her chambers at the top of the castle, where she lived with her 6 cats and survived on a diet of nuts, legumes, shellfish, and dairy. The same witch who had been demonized at the princess's baptism for warning them that this exactly might happen. At the princess christening, she told them that the princess needed to get vaccinations in order to prevent this. But as soon as she brought the matter of needles into the picture, they all got hysterical, and she withdrew and went to her castle. Soon after, the the witch still felt sorry for them, even if the idiots brought it upon themselves. Chances were that the princess would pull through at some point of time, but until then she remained slumbering. So the witch put the assembly to a perpetual trance while their princess slumbered. Ivy and thorns grew on the previously pristine walls, and the castle was soon forgotten. Until one day, when a noble, kind-hearted prince read about the castle and rode there on his horse. He dismounted and fought himself with the thorns, and there he found himself in front of the sleeping beauty. He knew he had to help her. He knew he had to wake her. And from his knowledge of fairy tales, he knew that only a true love's kiss could do so. But no gentleman would dream of kissing a sleeping girl. So he thought and thought, and when he got an idea, he rode back into town and went to a jeweler. He asked the jeweler to fashion a pendant in the shape of a flower. He then gave a loving kiss to the back of the pendant and went back to Sleeping Beauty. He put the pendant on her lips, in effect, them kissing. The princess woke up. Hey, she said. Hey, he said bashfully. The princess was hit by many realizations. Why was she in her Jimmy Jams? Why was her whole extended family and hotel palace staff snoozing around her bed? She rubbed her temples and blinked her eyes. Excuse me, what are you doing? What are you all doing here? Can you please get out of my room? The prince, I'm sorry to wake you up like this. I think you were in a coma or something, said the prince. The princess saw differently this time. Everything was suddenly anew. She asked, "Why are all the women in this room wearing dresses?" "This is how ladies dress," said a servant. "Well, are you comfortable in them, honestly?" Compelled by honesty, the ladies shook their heads. If it pleases you, if it pleases, if it pleases you, my ladyship, I feel much comfier in chinos." Then, wom- then women shall wear chinos and men dresses if they want," said the princess. "And forgive me if I am mad, but why are all the people in this room white? Where did all the non-white people go? Did they die?" The servants confirmed no. This was a very uncomfortable question, but the princess looked back on the prince and he said, "Good, sure, milady. I ain't yours nor anyone else's," said the princess. The, the prince asked the princess to join her in the evening for the ritzy kino event in the East Fairyland, and the prince with you. Uh, the prince saw that the beauty is no longer sleeping but miraculously woke, and the palace is coming to grips with ideas long overdue. This story perfectly encompasses appreciation for diversity and courage. Through, in the end, it would have taken a lot of courage and a strong sense of appreciation of diversity for the princess to say, say anything against hundreds of years of customs. Thank you very much.
Judges, kindly note that the participant spoke for 7 minutes and 15 seconds.
No doubt, unique ideas rule the world. Thank you, Rinaz, for your thought-provoking story.
Judges, may we begin with class 8 now? Now we move on to class 8. Our first participant is Amanat Sekhon, who will present the story titled My Lost Dollar by Stephen Leacock.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amanat Sekhon from class 8, and today I will be presenting a story, My Lost Dollar by Stephen Leacock. This story, My Lost Dollar, is a story which is written to amuse the reader. It has a lot of subtle hints of humor. Writing with it in the intention to amuse the reader, he mixes comical expression, moralizing, and self-pity to weave a story around a friend's failure to repay just $1. This shows the round square discovery sense of responsibility in how when someone borrows $1, they are obligated to return it. The way he drops subtle hints at his friend instead of talking to him directly shows how excellent his communication skills are. I chose this story because even when I was sad or down in the dumps, it has always succeeded in making me laugh. My Lost Dollar. My friend Todd owes me $1. He has owed it to me for 12 months, and I fear there is little prospect of his ever returning it. I can realize whenever I meet him that he has forgotten that he owes me $1. He meets me in the same frank, friendly way as always. My dollar has clean gone out of his mind. I fear that I shall never get it back. On the other hand, I know that I shall remember all my life that Todd owes me $1. It will make no difference, I trust, to our friendship, but I shall never be able to forget it. I don't know how it is with other people, but, if any man borrows $1 from me, I carry the recollection of it to the grave. Let me relate what happened. Todd borrowed this dollar last year on the 8th of April, just as he was leaving for Bermuda. He simply needed $1 in change for his taxi, and I lent it to him. It happened all simply and naturally. I hardly realized it till it was all over. He merely said, "Let me have $1, will you?" And I said, "Certainly. Is $1 enough?" I believe. In fact, I know that when Todd took that dollar, he meant to pay for it. He sent me a note from Hamilton, Bermuda. I thought when I opened it that the dollar would be in it, but it wasn't. He merely said that the temperature was up to 100. The figure misled me for a moment. Todd came back in 3 weeks. I was waiting for him at the train station, not because of the dollar, no, but because I really esteem him. I thought that it would be nice for him to see someone waiting for him at the platform after being away for 3 whole weeks. I said, "Let's take a taxi up to the club." But he said, "No, let's walk." We spent the evening talking about Bermuda. I was thinking of the dollar, but of course I couldn't make any reference to it. One simply can't. I said, "What sort of currency is used in Bermuda, and whether the American dollar goes at par?" But then again, could not make myself to bring any reference to it. It took me some time to realize that Todd had completely forgotten the dollar. I asked him one day how much in dollars his trip costed him, and he said that he had kept no accounts. A little later, I asked him if he felt settled down after the trip, and he said that he had practically forgotten about it. So I knew it was all over. In all this, I bear Todd no grudge. I have simply added him to the list of men who owe me $1 and have forgotten it. There are quite a few of them now. I bring no change in my demeanor towards them, but I only wish that I could forget. If there are, I meet Todd very frequently. Only 2 nights ago, I met him out at dinner, apparently talking without self-consciousness about Poland. He said that Poland would never pay his debts. You think a thing like that would have reminded him, wouldn't you? Well, it didn't seem to. But then, a thought, a rather painful thought, came into my mind at intervals. It is this: if Todd owes me $1 and has forgotten it, it is possible. Indeed, it is theoretically probable that there must be men to whom I owe $1 to, and I have forgotten. There must be a list of them. The more I think of it, the less I like it, because I am quite sure if I had once forgotten to repay $1, I should never pay it on this side of the grave. If there are such men, I want them to speak out, not all at once, but in reasonable numbers, and as far as may be, alphabetical order, and I will immediately write their names down on paper. I do not count here men who may have lent me an odd dollar over a bridge table, and I am indeed not thinking about that man who advanced those 30 cents last month for a plain soda at the Detroit Athletic Club. I always find that there's nothing like a refreshing plain soda after a tiring ride across the Canadian frontier, and that man knew exactly why I had felt that I had done enough for him. But if any man lent me $1 to pay for a taxi when I was leaving for Bermuda, I want to pay it. More than that, I want to start a general movement, a back to honesty movement for repaying all these odd dollars that are borrowed in moments of expansion. Let us remember that the greatest nations were built on the rock basis of absolute honesty. In conclusion, might I say that I do particularly ask that no reader of this book were to be careless enough to leave this copy around where it might be seen by Major Todd of the University Club of Montreal, because I, too, think that I might be in the same category as my dearest friend Todd. Thank you.
Judges, kindly note that the participant spoke for 6 minutes and 54 seconds.
Wow, what an ironic story. Now we move on to the next participant, Ahana Dhillon, who is going to present the story titled A Question of Trust by Victor Canning.
A good story is like a tasty soup. It follows a recipe and a handful of ingredients that blend in amazingly together. Good morning, everyone. Today, I, Ahana Dhillon, will be presenting my story, A Question of Trust by Victor Canning. It is said that to catch a thief, you must set a thief. However, it is also said that there is honor among thieves. I have chosen the story because of its mysterious that drew me towards it. And I have chosen to incorporate um, inventiveness in my story. Now, a question of trust. As far as most people were concerned, Horace Danby was a good, honest citizen. He was about 50 years old, unmarried, and lived with his housekeeper, who worried about his health, however, unnecessarily, as the worst he had was the occasional bout of hay fever. He was a locksmith and did well enough to have two assistants with him. Yes, Horace Danby was a good, hard-working citizen, but definitely not the most honest one. 15 years ago, he served his first and only sentence at a prison library. He was there because of his love for rare and expensive books. So once a year, he hatched a plan. He would steal from a safe. He would steal meticulously and every to the last detail would plan it out. Then, in one go, would take enough money to keep him happy for the next 12 months. He smiled as he walked down the driveway in the heat of the summers. He was sure, after all, how could this year's robbery go any different from the others? It would go off without a hitch. He knew it. He had been staking out this house on Shotover Grange for over 2 weeks now. He knew everything, the driveway, the gardens, the electric fence, all of it. He also knew that the family was in London right now, and the servants had a cinema. He quietly picked up the key from where he knew the housekeeper had left it and entered from the back door. As he entered, he heard a small growl coming. "Down, Sherry," he said, patting the dog on her head, bending down slightly. It was not that hard to tame dogs. After all you had to do was pet them on the head, say a few kind words, and use the correct name. He walked into the living room, where he saw the poor painting, behind which he knew lay the safe. He set down his tools, ignoring the small bouts of sneezes that came because of the hay fever. As he examined the lock, he scoffed slightly. This was, after all, no hard work for him. He was a locksmith, and it was shoddy craftsmanship. He picked up his tool and gave another sneeze. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. "Is it a cold or hay fever?" Instinctively, he replied, "Hay fever," as he turned around to meet the voice. The voice came again. "You really should get that checked out, you know. There's a treatment. You can get it if you know what plant gives you the hay fever. If you're honest about your work, then you really should get checked. After all, I could hear you from the top of the house just now." The speaker, he realized, was a young, beautiful woman dressed in red, and to his great relief, was smiling. He was quiet for a second, then said, "I did not expect to meet anyone from the family here." She replied, "I suppose it does blow a hole in your plans, doesn't it? After all, I didn't expect to meet a burglar either." He started to get desperate. "Please, ma'am, I am no burglar. I am not a thief. You have to listen to me. You have to let me go. Please." Her face hardened. "Why? Why should I let you go? You came here, into my house, to steal my jewels. If I let you go today, you'll only come back again tomorrow, and then you'll steal my jewels again. Or you'll go to some other house and steal from there. People like you are a threat to our society and deserve to be behind bars." Despite the events, he smiled. "Ma'am, I am the last thing from a threat to your society. I steal only from those who have a lot of money and can afford to lose some. And it's for a good cause. Also, I despise the thought of prison." Again, he was desperate. Again, For a few seconds, the young woman was quiet, then walked closer and said, "You really despise the thought of prison, don't you?" Hoping to gather some mercy. "I do. Please, if you let me go today, I promise I will never again steal from you or anyone else. I promise." Again, the woman was quiet, then came closer and said, "Well, I always have like the wrong sort. Very well, I will let you go, but you must do something for me first." "Anything," he replied desperately. You see, my husband had asked me to deposit my jewels in a bank. However, I put them in the safe here instead. I wanted to wear them for a party tonight, so I came down to get them. However, she trailed off, looking down. He smiled and said, "Let me guess. You've forgotten the numbers, haven't you?" "I have. Don't worry about that. I can give you your jewels in less than an hour. However, I'll have to break your safe to do it, if that is acceptable to you." "That is not a problem," she replied. "My husband isn't due back for at least another month. In that time, I can have it repaired." So, in less than an hour, he had broken into the safe, taking off his gloves first. After all, he had nothing to fear. Handed the jewels over to the young woman and had left. For 2 days, he kept his promise to the kind young woman and did not steal or even think of it. But on the third day, the greed started to get to him. As he thought of the rare books, expensive books that he wanted, and he decided he would rob another safe. However, this time he would not get caught. This time he could not get caught. But he never even had a chance to start planning. By noon, he'd been arrested for a robbery on Shotover Grange. And because of his fingerprints that were all over the safe, he tried to tell them that he was doing a favor to the mistress. He didn't steal anything. He just got the jewels out and gave it to her. However, the mistress of the house, a 60-year-old, gray-haired, sharp-tongued woman, said the story was utter nonsense. 15 years later, he was still, as assistant librarian in the prison library, he would think of the young lady in red who had been in the same profession as him and had tricked him. And anytime he heard the phrase, "the honor among thieves," would get very angry. Thank you.
Judges, please note that the participants spoke for 6 minutes and 50 seconds.
The vital message conveyed by the story, which we all should adopt, is to never trust anyone before discovering out about that person. Coming up now is the third participant, Tanvi Nagpal, with a story titled In the Kingdom of Fools by A.K. Ramanujan.
It is believed that fools are so dangerous that only wise men can handle them. Good morning. Today I, Tanvi Nagpal of class 8B, will be presenting you a story, The Kingdom of Fools by A.K. Ramanujan. The reason I chose the story is not because of its comic timing, but also it includes my favorite round square ability, which is the ability to solve problems. Once upon a time, in the Kingdom of Fools, both the king and the ministers were idiots. They didn't want to run things like the normal kings, so they changed night into day and day into night. The villagers were forced to do all their business, tell their feasts in the night, and go to sleep as soon as the sun came up. One day, a guru and a disciple came into the city. They looked around and to their astonishment saw nobody about. They wandered the town till evening, when suddenly the whole town woke up and started doing its business. They were very hungry and went to the first shop they saw. To their surprise, everything costed the same. Whether it was a measure of cup of rice or bananas, they were delighted. And they ate till they couldn't eat anymore. After they had cooked and eaten, the guru realized this was the kingdom of fools. He said to his disciple, "Let us go. This is no place for us." But the disciple wanted to stay. Everything was so cheap here, and all he wanted was good, cheap food. The guru argued and said, "They are all fools. You won't last very long. You have no idea what they'll do next to you." But the disciple still wanted to stay, so the guru left. He grew fat like the seaside sacred bull. One fine day, a thief broke into the rich merchant's house. He had made a hole in the wall and sneaked in and looted what he could. But as he was sneaking out, the wall became weak and fell on him. He was murdered on the spot. His brother ran to the king and said, "Oh, your highness, a mischief has happened. You see, my brother was pursuing his ancient trade when the wall fell on him and killed him on the spot. This is a great injustice, and compensation should be made to the family that has suffered." The king said, "Please bring the owner of the house." The rich merchant came in trembling and said, "Yes, your highness." "What's your name?" said the king. "Such and such, your highness." "Well, were you at home when the burglary happened?" "Yes, your highness." "Well, then you should know it's your fault. If you had made a strong wall, the burglar wouldn't have killed." "Well, you see," trembled the rich merchant, "it was built during my father's time. I had no part in it. It was the fault of the bricklayer. I know where he is. He's an old man now. I can bring it to him. Can bring you to him." The bricklayer, now an old man, came and begged, "Sir, it's not my fault. Yes, I did build this house. Yes, I didn't do my job properly. But you see, the day I was working on this wall, a girl came up and down the road several times with her jingling anklets, making me lose focus and not be able to concentrate. It's her fault, not mine." The king brought to her. The old woman said, "Yes, sir, before you say anything, it's not my fault either. You see, I had given some gold to the goldsmith for some jewelry I wanted, but he didn't do it. He kept procrastinating and said, 'I'll give it to you this, again, that.' I had to walk up and down the road so many times because of that." The king said, The case deepens. It is a very difficult case. Bring the goldsmith." The goldsmith said, "Sir, it's not my fault either. You see, before I could make the jewelry that the dancing woman wanted, I had to make some jewelry for the merchant. The merchant was so impatient and kept scolding me. You know how rich men get so impatient." "Huh, who is this rich merchant?" And it turned out the rich merchant was the same whose wall had killed the poor thief. Before, however, the rich merchant could say anything, the king said, it's not your fault. I know what you're going to say. But you see, when you inherited your father's riches, you also inherited his sin. It's your fault, and nobody else's." The poor merchant couldn't do anything as he watched. A stake was made for the execution. But, however, the minister noticed that but the merchant was too thin to be probably executed. The king saw to this and said, "We must need a fat man to be properly executed." They brought a fat man, which turned out to be the disciple who had gone fat because of his daily greed. The disciple begged, "I'm a sannyasi. I didn't do anything. Please leave me. I'm innocent." But the king said, "No, you are fat enough to be properly executed. Not your fault. I don't care." The disciple gave up on his life and prayed to his guru one last time. The guru, having the magical powers, heard him and came rumbling into the town. He scolded the disciple and said something to it in his ear, and then went to the king and said, "Oh, wisest of kings, who is smarter, the guru or disciple?" "The guru, of course," said the king. "Then you must put me to stake first, for it is I who should die, not the disciple." The disciple heard this and started fighting. "No, I will die. No, I will die." The king, puzzled at this, asked the guru, "Why are you guys fighting?" The guru said, "I will tell you if you come close and promise to put me to death first. You see, this is the stake of the god of death. He has promised me that whoever dies first in the stake will be king, and whoever dies second will be the minister." The king, hearing this, was surprised. He postponed the execution and consulted his minister. The minister said, "Why should they be king and minister in the next round of life? Why should we give a kingdom to somebody who doesn't even deserve it? Let us die and be the king and minister in the next life as well." The king agreed and disguised himself as guru and disciple. As usual, the execution took place and the king minister died in place of the guru and disciple. When the bodies were thrown down for the vultures and crows, people were surprised. This was the king and the minister and not the guru and disciple. They mourned in the night, but they thought of the kingdom and the future. They thought, why shouldn't it be the guru and disciple who were trying to leave the town unnoticed? They begged them, "Please, please be king and minister. Please, we do not want to live like this." The guru and disciple agreed, but only if they changed the old rules. From then on, the the town turned into a normal town, where night was night, day was day, and nothing could cost its same. Thank you.
Judges, kindly note that the participants spoke for 6 minutes and 52 seconds.
A world full of fools. It left us all astonished. Thank you, Tanvi. Now we have Riddhi Aluwalia, who is going to present the story titled Rice Bowl Wishes by Bernadette and Dr. Donald.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to recite my story, The Rice Bowl Wishes by Bernadette and Dr. Donald. This story teaches us to be considerate towards others. I chose this story because I found it interesting and it gives us a unique moral lesson about what the power of knowledge can do. Rice Bowl Wishes. One, Once upon a time, in a small village in China, three young boys were adopted by an old lady, Ni Yu. She sent two of them, Lan and Zhu, to school dressed in very fine clothes. However, the third boy, Sam, he was blind. She did not send him to school. He did odd jobs for the old lady. One night, a deadly fire broke out in the place where they stored rice. Lan and Joe ran out to escape the fire. However, Sam, he risked his life and went inside to save the old lady who was already screaming, "Help! Help!" escape the fire. Seeing how brave and courageous Sam was, she gave him a rice bowl which could grant wishes. Before breathing her last breath, she told him, "Remember, my boy, this bowl can grant one wish 1 year, two wishes every 2 years, and three wishes every 3 years. But all the wishes would be revoked if this bowl was broken. So wish wisely." When Sam made his first wish, which was to see the lady one last time before burying her, the wishing bowl granted it. When Lan and Joe came back, they got to know of the rice bowl. They also wished for something like a house and money and good grades without studying or doing any kind of hard work. After 3 years, all three of them came together again. And Lan and Joe wished for something like money. They got greedy and asked for more and more. But Sam, he wished for a library loaded with thousands and thousands of books. Every 3 years, they came together and wished for something. Lan and Joe always wished for something like high rank offices, money, wives, sons, without working for any of it. And Sam, he always wanted more and more books to replace his old ones. He gained a lot of knowledge by reading those books, and people started looking up to him and came to him for asking advices. After 9 years, on one such occasion, three of them came together, and Lan and Joe wanted to keep the bowl to themselves. They got greedy. They snatched the bowl from Sam's hand, but it slipped out of their hands and it shattered. Immediately, Sam became blind and lost his vision. Lan and Joe lost all their possessions. They became the oldest students in their school and they learned the lesson of their stupidity. But after that, they became very dedicated to their studies. Sam, however, did not lose the knowledge that he gained over the years by reading those books. He became to be known as one of the wisest teachers in China, and he led expeditions teaching people. Although the magic bowl had lost all its magic, he asked someone to glue its broken pieces together and kept it with him wherever he went, as it reminded him of the old lady Ni Yu and motivated him. Moral of the story: life is what you choose to make of it. Knowledge is power. Thank you.
Judges, kindly note that the participants spoke for 5 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yes, you truly said. We should all learn that life is what we choose to make of it. Thank you, Riddhi. With this, we have now come to the end of the competition.
Wow, what an amazing performance by all the participants. I now request Ruchi ma'am to say a few words of motivation to the participants.
Good morning, students. Well, I'd like to congratulate all the participants for coming on the stage and for being good storytellers. But if we go and if we reflect, I believe all of us are storytellers, and we've got too much of information floating around. And of course, storytelling has been a part of our tradition where it has come from generations, and of course, whether you refer to mythology, or any aspect. But what I'd like to say is that it was really nicely woven things, and of course the way you modulated, the way you put across stories, very well done. But would like to encourage more children to participate and keep telling good stories and narrate stories which do create an impact in other people's lives. Thank you so much.
I now request Sajneet ma'am to address the audience and announce the results.
Good morning everyone. Such a wonderful morning. We heard a vast range of stories today, from contemporary and reinterpreted stories as well, which brought a laugh to many. Stories evolved from a visual style, like cave paintings. Those were the very first stories that we ever as human beings experienced, and then from visual they went to a verbal tradition, carried on from generation to generation. It's how cultures transfer moral values and entertainment, right? They transfer culture from one generation to another. And when nothing remains, really, how we will reinterpret everything will be through stories. So it's really a very, very integral part of who we are as human beings. And we've heard stories from our nannies and dadis, and stories every day. We hear all sorts, and we have to sift through those and take what we can, imbibe what we can, and really enjoy this art and take it forward. So it was really a lovely morning. Thank you so much, everyone who participated. It was truly a lot of courage it takes to come on stage, and even when you forget, kind of carry on and troop on. And after 2 years, I mean, it might have been a little challenging, but we all supported you, and it was a great morning. Thank you so much. So we have the results for grade 7, class 7 Interhouse English Storytelling Competition 2022. We'll begin from the 4th position. We have House Taxila with Harpriya Bakshi representing. Ruskin Bond, The Thief's Story. In 3rd position, we have House Gandhara represented by Vedaksh Verma. Congratulations. In 2nd position, we have House Vikramshila represented by Renaz Gulati with The Sleeping Beauty. Very, very interesting. A lot of things kind of put into that reinterpretation. And 1st position, we have House Nalanda with Anshika Singla, The Aged Mother, Matsuo Basho. Really a beautiful, beautiful telling of that story. Brilliant. All right, I will continue with the festivities. Interhouse English Storytelling Competition, Class 8. We'll begin with the 4th position, House Taxila, represented by Riddhi Aluwalia with Rice Bowl Wishes. In third position, we have House Gandhara, Ahana Dillon. A Question of Trust by Victor Canning. In second position, we have House Vikramshila, represented by Tanvi Nagpal. And first position has been bagged by House Nalanda, My Lost Dollar by Amanat Sekhon. Congratulations to all. Okay, so we're on a roll. Overall house positions. The fourth position, House Taxila is in fourth position. House Gandhara takes third position. House Vikramshila is in the second position, and the first position has been backed by House Nalanda. Huge congratulations to everyone. It's a wonderful, wonderful morning. Thank you all. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you, ma'am, for inspiring us all with your words of wisdom. On behalf of the English department, I would like to express gratitude towards the judges for taking out time for the competition. Heartiest congratulations to the winners and participants. It does not matter whether you win or lose. All that matters is the courage to participate. The experience you gain at times is more valuable than the outcome. I also take this opportunity to thank all the support staff, Ashish sir, Manoj sir, Dharampal bhaiya and Deepu bhaiya for rendering their services for the smooth flow of the competition. Last but not least, I would like to thank the students of class 7 and 8 for being such a wonderful audience. Thank you.